Never going to see a 600-foot wind turbine or solar panel in Central Park or in the Hamptons. Where we're going to see it is in 4 rural communities across New York State and across the country because they don't really have a say.
It is a new day under the Biden administration.
Think of us as David and the state and developers as Goliath.
Climate crisis, my friends, is the test of our times.
Don't build a monstrosity in my backyard. Don't do it here.
Our commitment to what I call clean energy patriotism.
Why are you destroying the environment to save the environment?
The world is going to end in 12 years if we don't address climate change.
The people who are enacting these policies, they don't have to worry about a wind farm coming to their neighborhood.
It just drives you insane.
Politicians in both parties have spent decades pushing wind energy as a way to produce power without fossil fuels. They spent tens of billions in tax dollars propping up wind projects that wouldn't work without federal subsidies. In the process, they've destroyed some of the most beautiful places in this country with ugly, noisy turbines.
Look at this shit.
They've degraded our power grid. They've triggered power outages and blackouts that have killed Americans.
These are people that have had no electricity for 13 hours.
They did all of this to enrich the most powerful people in the country, and they did it at the expense of the most vulnerable. We spent the last year traveling the United States to identify the real costs of wind power. This is what we found.
Well, the number one rule of wind development is this. It's the Starbucks rule, which says, never try and site a wind project within 30 miles of a Starbucks coffee shop.
Kevin Martis lives in Michigan, where he spends a lot of his time fighting industrial wind projects.
The demographic that's willing to pay a premium price for quality coffee is the same demographic that typically has the education and financial wherewithal to organize and resist irresponsible wind projects.
We met him at this wind farm in southern Michigan, which, by the way, is a 31-minute drive from the nearest Starbucks.
People who look at some of these wind proposals figure out quickly that one of the reasons their community is being targeted is it's poor and they're perceived as being desperate for revenue. They just think we're a bunch of rubes and hicks out here.
Since the very first American wind farm started spinning in New Hampshire back in 1980, the most powerful supporters of so-called green energy have successfully prevented wind farms from being built near their homes.
There is a strong consensus that global warming is being accelerated by the burning of fossil fuels.
When developers proposed a wind farm in Nantucket Sound that was within view of Ted Kennedy's Oceanside compound,
These 130 wind turbines will be producing clean, renewable energy.
Kennedy used his ample political power to crush the project.
Ted Kennedy and his friend Ted Stevens from Alaska and a number of other people tried to sneak amendments through that would have killed Cape Wind.
Those windmills were never built, nor was a proposed project off the Hamptons. That was scrapped in April of 2021.
There's a group of wealthy people with strong green sensitivities, but the second it comes to destroying their view in their cottage country and their fancy compounds, if you will, they will spend any amount of money necessary to protect what's valuable to them.
The consequence of this affluent NIMBYism is that the high cost of green energy falls on poorer places, places like rural Iowa, home to Mike and Tanya Lamb.
Come on in, welcome, come on in. It is our dream home, but we have been inundated with wind turbines that now have really honestly destroyed our peaceful country living.
The Lambs built their home on 120 acres in western Iowa back in 2006. For more than a decade, they were happy there. But then, in 2019, the wind farms came.
This is our view from our dinner table. Turbines every direction.
And, we get a lot of shadow flicker in here, too.
I mean, just imagine being in a room and someone's turning the light switch on and off, on and off, on and off. I mean, and it's in the middle of the day. Well, it's actually in the morning is when it's the worst. And it almost makes you dizzy.
The Lambs never consented to any of this. No one asked them. None of the turbines are on their property. But because of its vast size, the project is visible and very audible from thousands of feet away.
How much money do you make off that turbine right there?
Oh, we make absolutely nothing.
Zero.
Off that.
Nothing.
No.
That's on our neighbor's property. Our absentee landowner property.
And there's no rule saying you can't destroy your neighbor's property value by putting up giant wind turbines in all of their windows?
No. There's no regulations in this county. No, I don't want to prevent our neighbors from making money, but I guess I would feel kind of bad if I was making money and they couldn't sleep at night.
Hello.
Not sleeping at night is just one of the things the Lambs have had to suffer with.
It's a vibrating, beating, thumping noise. And it's just constant, and it's very repetitive. And it's just, you just can't get away from it. You can't escape it. And we know that there's health concerns out there, and I just, quite frankly, don't want to be the guinea pig.
I mean, we have the liberty to go to work. We don't have to be here 24/7, but
our animals are here all day, every day. They can't get away. The coonhound used to sleep outside on the front porch, and when it's really loud, he comes in the garage, or he'll ask to go down the basement, and he'll sleep in the basement. And then if it's loud enough, we'll be sleeping in the basement with him.
Many times the noise has been so loud that it forced the Lambs out of their own home.
There was a night in 2019, and it was late fall, maybe early winter. I just woke up and I thought, what is wrong with me? And the pressure in my ears was just like, I just got to get out of here. So, and I think I left and you stayed.
I stayed.
And you probably went to the basement, but I went and drove around for an hour, and I was pissed, and I just thought, this is not the way to live.
So how did it happen? Well, it happened the same way it always does. It's the exploitation of the weak by the powerful. In this case, the wind company is called MidAmerican Energy. It's owned by none other than billionaire Warren Buffett.
They come in at a time where the commodity prices was low, so it looked very appealing to some of these farmers because, grain and soybeans has been depressed for the last 3 or 4 or 5 years. They weren't making much money.
The farmers make money for each wind turbine they agree to, but due to lax regulations and weak zoning rules, neighbors have no recourse when their quality of life is destroyed by the turbines.
I mean, there's really no protection period.
By the time they realized they needed ordinances, it was too late because the wind company had all their
paperwork done.
Yeah.
They had started constructing the turbine.
Wind farms only exist because they're heavily subsidized by politicians with your money. They wouldn't exist otherwise. Warren Buffett himself has publicly said that. He said wind farms, quote, don't make sense without the credit. That's your credit. The subsidies are huge, and so are the projects they finance. With no chance of being approved near Malibu or Greenwich or in the mountains of Aspen, the development invariably happens in poorer parts of the country. The number one place for wind farms is Texas. But the question is, what happens when the turbines stop spinning?
This is Abilene's number one for New Country, Q105. Look, you're in my prayers. I hope that you stay warm. I got to go check on my wife and my daughters. Make sure that we're keeping them plenty warm.
We're in the middle of nowhere in Texas. We're trying to find a place just to sleep tonight. Everything is sold out. There's nothing available.
It's now expected to be the largest insurance claim event in Texas history. This winter storm totally overwhelmed the power system in Texas.
And I can tell you this morning, nearly 4.2 million Texans still have no electricity.
Texas has the most wind power capacity in the United States. But the Texas turbines, which are not winterized, iced up during a cold weather event in February of 2021. Electricity output collapsed.
Texas regulators ordered rolling blackouts Monday as an Arctic blast has frozen wind turbines.
There's no water in the hotel.
You had a fair amount of icing on the turbines that shut down some of them because they got iced up.
Chuck DeVore is the vice president of the Texas Public Policy Foundation.
The coldest part of the storm came in and demand soared. And what happened was the grid, under the strain of the demand, began to short out.
Oh, wow. This is one of the coldest times I've ever seen it. We've been below freezing since Thursday.
Harlan Coates' family owns land outside of Big Spring, Texas. The family leases some of their land to wind developers.
We're standing here in the energy capital of America. You've got a refinery there, the Big Spring, Texas refinery. There's transmission lines going across our head here. We've got wind turbines there and a pump jack right here.
And the crazy thing is I've been without power for 2 days and we've got all this power here, and the reason is these wind turbines are not spinning.
You have all this federal and state subsidies for wind and solar that have caused an overbuilding of wind and solar in Texas. It's cheap energy. Big companies love it. They love to virtue signal with it because they say, hey, look at us, we're were zero carbon, right? And what they really like, of course, is that really cheap wind energy. What they're not paying for, though, is the reliability of the grid. The Texas grid, like the California grid, is becoming increasingly unreliable and difficult to maintain, difficult to keep that power in a steady basis.
This 20-year-old turbine is leaking oil. Doesn't look too green to me.
3 months into office, Joe Biden issued permits for a massive wind farm off the coast of Rhode Island and the coast of Massachusetts. Those permits gave foreign wind power companies based in Spain and Denmark, permission to develop Vineyard Wind 1. That project will cover more than 160,000 acres of one of the most productive fisheries in the country.
Been running my own boat for 43 years. And I fished from Cape Hatteras to Maine. The last 10 or 15 years, it's been almost exclusively squid. I fish all of these areas in the summer. This is Nantucket, this is Martha's Vineyard. All of these little things, they're all squid marks. The Vineyard Wind Farm is going to be in this area.
So rather than wreck Barack Obama's oceanside view from his estate on Martha's Vineyard, the government decided to place the wind farm 15 miles off the coast in one of the best fisheries in the United States.
Ultimately, the wind farms are going to take 50% of my life away. They're going to take the whole summer fishery away, and I don't know what we'll do after that.
Wind turbines are devastating to wildlife and to commercial fishermen. The noise caused by the building of the turbines limits the ability of fish to coordinate their movements. Effectively, they go blind. In the UK, wind farms were blamed for whales that washed up on shore. They also pose serious safety hazards for mariners who have to navigate through them.
Basically, all of the summer squid fishing grounds are slated to become wind farms.
Megan Lapp is the general manager of Seafree Shoreside in the fishing community of Port Judith, Rhode Island.
This is one of the primary squid ports in the United States and, in fact, the world.
Slack.
Commercial fishing in the United States is hundreds of years old. It's one of the, if not the oldest industry in this country. And you're talking about displacing it for a 25 to 30 year wind project, which will bring with it permanent loss of the ocean, permanent ocean industrialization.
That's a good copy. Sea stretchers going back to 60.
The commercial fishing industry works on renewable resources. That's why we've been here for hundreds of years, and we can be here for hundreds of years more unless our fishing grounds are paved by foreigners. A lot of the offshore wind companies that currently possess leases in U.S. federal waters are owned by foreign governments. You have Equinor, which is 67% owned by the Norwegian government. You have Ørsted, which is 51% owned by the Danish government. Then you have Vineyard Wind, which is 50% owned by Copenhagen Infrastructure Partners.
It's foreign companies that will make a fortune off the massive wind power project.
Yeah, fuck the wind farms.
The conglomerate area of leases where Vineyard Wind is located is over 1,400 square miles.
Yeah, you might have to run it down.
Some of the best people I've ever met in my life work on these boats. They have fished their whole lives. It's a multi-generational business. It's been passed down from generation to generation, knowledge passed down for hundreds of years.
So we're coming up on almost 100 years of one family fishing the same piece of ground.
Tommy Williams and his son Aaron fish out of Stonington, Connecticut.
That's Aaron right there. That's his childhood.
It's a way of life. I personally don't have any other option.
Because salt water is so corrosive, even optimistic estimates suggest that the lifespan of an offshore wind turbine is less than 3 decades.
You're willing to sacrifice an industry that's sustained itself for hundreds of years for a program that's going to last 25 years. It's not going to work. And you're sacrificing something that's proved itself sustainable for hundreds of years.
If you're so for wind and it's really what you want, stick one up in your driveway, right in the middle of your driveway. Put that thing up. And you can listen to it whine, you can watch the lights, you can take your car and try to drive around it every morning to get out of your driveway, because that's what we're going to have to do.
So wind projects don't just destroy rural America and the power grid that sustains it. Wind projects also have terrifying environmental costs.
We have documents from the federal government and other studies that show that hundreds of thousands of birds are killed every year by wind turbines.
Lisa Lenoz is an environmentalist and president of the Wildlife Energy and Community Coalition.
We're seeing eagles killed, golden eagles, bald eagles. We're seeing songbirds in large quantities being killed.
Wind turbines kill so many endangered animals, particularly birds, that the Obama and then the Biden administrations issued waivers that exempt the industrial wind companies from the Endangered Species Act. But it's not just birds.
In 2003, there was a discovery by accident that there were a large number of bats at the base of a turbine facility in West Virginia.
The tips of turbine blades can move at speeds up to 200 miles per hour. The pressure vortexes they create cause bats' lungs to explode in midair.
It is such a serious problem. Bats that had large populations are now quickly moving into the territory of extinction. Our ecosystem depends on bats. Our farming depends on bats.
Thanks to the environmental destruction of wind turbine farms, the California condor and the North Atlantic right whale and many other species could face extinction. All this for a source of energy that isn't even commercially viable.
This is not about the environment. This is not about climate change. This is not about getting us off fossil fuel. This is not about reducing our emissions. This is purely about money. That's why these projects are being built. There's an enormous amount of money. It's JP Morgan, it's Goldman Sachs. They are heavily involved in expanding wind energy in this country.
So how do the power companies get away with all of this? Because they're powerful and they're ruthless.
My name's Esther Reitman, and I'm from rural Ontario. In 2009, there was a pamphlet, and it said that there would be some turbines built in our area. A local couple had alerted our Ministry of Natural Resources that there was an eagle's nest right where 3 turbines were going up. They thought that the government, the Ministry of Natural Resources, would protect it. Instead, what the government did was hurry it ahead so that on New Year's Day, which no government official works on New Year's Day, that's when they have issued a permit to NextEra Energy to remove this eagle's nest.
That's not peaceful. That isn't peaceful. That is not peaceful.
I filmed NextEra removing the bald eagle's nest.
If I was you, if I was in your place, I would step down and say, I am not doing this. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I gotta feed my family.
Feed your family bird's nests then.
On the video, I created an image that I had used, and it was their logo parody to read NextEra Energy. I was sent the cease and desist letter, and I didn't respond. All I did was post their letters up online so everybody could see what was happening. This is how they operate. So on the 14th day at 9 o'clock at night, a guy came to my house and served me with the lawsuit. If this was like a third world country, I think they probably would have just shot me, to be honest. This is what I would call like legal warfare. This is a way of getting opposition out of the picture. It was just to silence them, to scare them that they'll lose everything. Your family will lose everything. That should scare you enough. The lawsuit actually said that they would take absolutely everything I had and donate it to United Way. I didn't have much. I had a used old car. We were renting, and I had a couple little kids. I mean, I guess they could take it all, but it'd be kind of strange to have United Way take all that. We knew that if the turbines went up, we were going to leave, which was a really hard decision. NextEra did succeed. The turbines themselves are what pushed me out. It wasn't so much the lawsuit. I would have fought that to the end. I can't fight physical machines. I haven't been back to Ontario. Not even to visit family or friends. NextEra never dropped the lawsuit. They let it hang. So it hung over my head for a good 5 years. If NextEra comes to your community and plans to put in large wind turbines around your home, fight with everything you have, absolutely everything. That can be protests to legal action to whatever you can possibly use. Because once they're up, you can't take them back down again.
Governor Cuomo, New York governor, he wants to set up these wind farms. I think they're offshore.
Wind power, renewables, I support.
In 2019, the state of New York enacted its own Green New Deal. The legislation required the state of New York to derive 70% of its energy from so-called renewables by the year 2030.
Skeptics say much of what the state is doing is not so much about developing green energy as it is about politics and boosting a few special businesses.
With surgical precision, Democratic politicians in New York and the wind developers they represent foisted these projects onto politically disfavored areas, places that vote Republican, like the heavily Republican coast of Lake Ontario in western New York.
We're very old-fashioned, Constitution-believing, Bible-thumping residents here. That's what we are.
Lynn Johnson is a legislator in Orleans County, New York. Governor Cuomo and out-of-state wind developers, one called Apex Clean Energy, spent years trying to construct a massive wind farm near her home.
To put 50, 60, 70 turbines in a very small square mileage area would just devastate our town.
There's no question this is about punishing rural, conservative voters who don't see the world the same way as some of their fellow citizens in Manhattan or in Brooklyn.
Rob Ort is a state senator who represents the area.
But we had some local stakeholders here who did a great job at pushing back.
To have a governor come in as a dictator, which is what he did, tell us what we can do with our land. And basically, the people rose up and they cried out.
He thinks we're a bunch of rednecks.
John Ricci led the opposition to the proposed wind project.
Let's not talk about Cuomo anymore. It's Albany. It's the Albany bureaucrats, the majority of which are all downstate folks. They look at this as the tundra. What I've done is I've marked the areas where there will never be wind turbines. And it's the Capital District, Southeastern District, which is like Westchester, the metro area, and Long Island. Okay? The reason is because there's too much money here that they can fight this kind of thing. And most of the assembly members come from this area of the state.
The project is called Lighthouse Wind, and it's enormous. If constructed, it would cover more than 10 miles of apple orchards and cornfields on the southern shore of Lake Ontario.
We have all these protections under the U.S. Constitution. One protection we don't have is that the U.S. Constitution doesn't require a state to not be stupid. That's one of the bigger reasons that we decided that we had to fight this thing.
Ricci founded a group called Save Ontario Shores, SOS. The group took over town governments. It launched a media blitz. It convinced voters to resist the industrial wind projects. Thanks to Ricci's advocacy, 90% of town residents opposed the project.
So you can imagine 47 700-foot tall turbines with blinking red aviation lights every night. And you can see them all from here. You can see them all from here if they were to have gone in.
Grassroots organizing worked. Apex Green Energy suspended their project. It was a major defeat for Governor Cuomo and the industrial wind energy he represents. But the battle didn't end.
And so what did the power brokers and elites in Albany do? They changed the rules.
Good afternoon.
When the governor found out that we were winning, he asked the developers and the lobbyists to write the new regulation.
Cuomo and state-level Democrats responded to Ricci's victory by rigging the system, by ending democracy in the Republican portions of New York State. They snuck a provision into a budget bill that centralized the approval process for all future wind power projects. Albany now has the power to bypass all local opposition.
This state, it's not a democracy, it's a socialist republic.
Democracy is great so long as you get the outcome that you want. And when you don't, well, then you just change the rules and subvert democracy.
Save Ontario Shores joined a lawsuit to have that regulation overturned and democracy restored. But for now, they're at the mercy of wind developers.
Most things we hear out of Albany is, yeah, we're going to do this for the greater good. Well, that smacks of, and it sounds a whole lot like fascist talk to me. Yeah, we're going to do this, and we're going to ruin your life, but it's for the greater good, and you should be happy about it. I'm still pissed off that after 8 years, I even have to fucking think about this. If they decide to turn the project back on, they're really in for a war.
The effect of this? Strained power grids, blackouts, the possible extinction of endangered animals, and more than anything, the degradation of the quality of life for Americans throughout the country. Is this coming to you, to your neighborhood? Likely so.